Hello and welcome to Earthly Explorer, a quiet space where we slow down, breathe deeply, and wander through the mysteries of our planet. Tonight, our journey is not into the present world, nor even into the familiar chapters of history. Instead, we will drift backward, farther back than memory, farther back than the oldest stones of civilization, into the deep corridors of time itself. For there, hidden in rock and fossil, lies a truth both humbling and haunting. Again and again, Earth has nearly erased the possibility of us. We like to imagine that humanity's story is inevitable, that our species was destined to rise, to walk upright, to dream, to create. But the Earth does not write destinies. It writes cycles. And throughout its long story, 5 times in particular, the planet has convulsed in violence so profound that nearly all life was swept away. We call these moments the mass extinctions, events when at least 3/4 of species vanished in geologically short spans. Each of these extinctions was a trial, a resetting of the evolutionary clock. Each one could have erased the lineages that would one day become us. And yet, somehow, survival always found a way. From shattered ecosystems, from chaos and collapse, threads of resilience endured. Those threads are our ancestors. Not just human ancestors, but the ancestors of mammals, of vertebrates, of the fragile chain that leads eventually to our existence. In this sense, every mass extinction was an attempt to erase humanity before it began. To understand this, we must first grasp the scale of time. Humanity's entire history, the rise of agriculture, the building of cities, the spread of culture, spans only about 10,000 years. Our species, Homo sapiens, is roughly 300,000 years old. But life on Earth stretches back 3.8 billion years. In that time, ecosystems have flourished and collapsed, continents have drifted and collided, climates have shifted from ice to fire and back again. Against this backdrop, we are a recent arrival, our story dependent on billions of years of chance and survival. The first of the great extinctions struck long before animals walked the land. The Ordovician Silurian extinction about 443 million years ago wiped out nearly 85% of marine species. It was triggered by shifting continents, falling sea levels, and a sudden ice age that froze oceans and collapsed food chains. The survivors were few, but they carried forward the possibility of future complexity. Had they not endured, vertebrates, the lineage that would one day lead to us, might never have emerged. And so the story carries us back to that frozen age, to the Ordovician Silurian extinction, the first of the great trials, when Earth itself seemed determined to sweep the slate clean, and the ocean, once full of life, turned suddenly silent. The Ordovician period, long before dinosaurs or forests, was an age of oceans. Life thrived in shallow seas that stretched across continents, teeming with trilobites, brachiopods, corals, and the first primitive fish. These waters were warm and rich, a paradise of marine diversity. For millions of years, ecosystems flourished undisturbed, building reefs, spreading across coasts, filling every niche. The Earth seemed stable, abundant, alive. And then, suddenly, it changed. Continents drifted across the globe, their positions shifting like pieces of a slow puzzle. What is now North Africa and South America moved over the South Pole, triggering a dramatic shift in climate. Ice sheets spread across Gondwana, pulling water from the oceans. Sea levels dropped sharply, and the shallow seas that had nurtured life evaporated into barren land. For species adapted to warmth and stability, the change was catastrophic. As waters receded, ecosystems collapsed. Entire reef systems crumbled, exposed to air. Trilobites, once dominant, dwindled. Corals and brachiopods died in masses. Food chains, once rich with plankton and predators, broke apart. The world grew colder, harsher, emptier. It is estimated that nearly 85% of marine species vanished, leaving behind empty shells and stone. And yet, even as ice gripped the planet, the climate swung again. Volcanic activity released carbon dioxide, warming the Earth once more. But this warming brought no rescue. Instead, it suffocated oceans. As glaciers melted, fresh water poured into seas, disrupting circulation. Oxygen levels dropped, turning large regions anoxic, devoid of breath. Creatures that had survived the cold now perished in stagnant waters. Life was struck a second blow, one extinction piled upon another. Imagine the silence. Where once trilobites scuttled across sea floors and corals built living cities, now emptiness stretched. Reefs collapsed into rubble, fish drifted lifeless, ecosystems dissolved. The ocean, cradle of life for hundreds of millions of years, seemed suddenly hostile, a place where survival was chance and extinction the rule. Yet even in devastation, threads of resilience remained. Some lineages endured, tucked into refuges where oxygen still lingered or where ice retreated. Among them were small, jawless fish, the ancestors of vertebrates. Fragile, unassuming, they weathered the collapse, carrying forward the seeds of a lineage that would one day include us. Their survival was not guaranteed. It was luck, adaptation, and chance. But it was enough. From them the story continued. The Ordovician Silurian extinction reminds us that life's path is not inevitable. Had the ice lingered longer, had the ocean suffocated more completely, the fragile vertebrate line might have ended here. No fish, no amphibians, no mammals, no humanity. The story of us could have ended before it began. Instead, against odds, life endured, diminished but unbroken. And so Earth moved forward into the Silurian period. Seas refilled, climate stabilized, and survivors began to spread. New reefs grew, fish diversified, plants crept onto land. Out of silence came renewal, fragile but determined. But the lesson remained. Earth could destroy as easily as it created, and the survival of lineages was always contingent, never certain. From this first great trial, we drift onward through time, toward another collapse. The Devonian extinction, when the age of fish gave way to disaster, and once again life teetered on the edge of erasure. From the silence that followed the Ordovician Silurian extinction, life slowly rebuilt. Coral reefs flourished again, fish diversified into strange new forms, and the seas became kingdoms of armored giants and swift predators. This was the Devonian, often called the Age of Fish, when vertebrates expanded across the oceans in dazzling variety. Trilobites still crawled across seafloors, ammonites drifted with their spiral shells, and early plants began to colonize land, weaving the first green carpets across riverbanks. The earth was alive, thriving, inventive. But hidden within its abundance was the seed of another collapse. As plants spread across continents, they transformed the planet. Roots broke down rocks, releasing minerals into rivers. Vast forests of early trees altered the balance of carbon and oxygen, cooling the climate and reshaping soils. These changes enriched the land but destabilized the seas. Nutrients poured into oceans, fueling algal blooms. When algae died and decayed, oxygen levels in water plummeted, leaving vast stretches of seafloor anoxic, dead zones where life suffocated. For marine creatures this was catastrophic. Reef builders collapsed, and with them the ecosystems that depended on their shelter. Trilobites, which had survived previous extinctions, suffered heavily. Many groups of fish, once dominant, disappeared forever. The collapse was not a single event but a series of pulses stretched across millions of years, each wave of extinction cutting deeper into biodiversity. Among the victims were the armored placoderms, fish that once ruled the seas with jaws of bone and bodies plated like tanks. They had been the apex predators of their age, yet by the end of the Devonian they were gone, leaving ecosystems open for new forms to rise. It was a reminder that dominance offers no protection when the planet shifts beneath you. And yet, within this age of loss, a fragile hope emerged. Among the survivors were the lobe-finned fish, strange creatures with muscular fins and primitive lungs. Some of them began venturing onto land, clumsy at first but determined. These pioneers gave rise to amphibians, the first vertebrates to walk in open air. From them would eventually come reptiles, mammals, and humans. Their survival through the Devonian collapse was no certainty. Had they fallen with the placoderms, the story of life might have ended at the shoreline, never crossing onto land. The Devonian extinction is sometimes called the long goodbye, for it unfolded in stages. Each pulse of collapse pruned life further, until nearly 3/4 of all species were gone. The seas, once filled with armored giants, grew emptier, quieter, ruled by new survivors. The earth was reshaping itself, closing one chapter to open another. But for the fragile line that led to us, this was another trial survived by the narrowest of margins. Picture the seas of late Devonian earth. Coral reefs stretch in vibrant towers, schools of armored fish glide through currents, forests of strange plants rise on distant shores. Then, slowly silence spreads. Oxygen fades from waters, reefs bleach and crumble, fish suffocate and vanish. The armored giants drift lifeless, their reign ended. In shallow lagoons, however, a few lobe-finned fish lift themselves awkwardly onto muddy banks, their fins pressing against soil, their lungs gulping air. In these fragile movements lies the future, a stubborn persistence that carries life forward despite collapse. This extinction, like the one before, reminds us that humanity's story is precarious. It rests not only on survival but on chance, that the right lineages endured, that catastrophe did not erase the ancestors we depend upon. If the Devonian collapse had been more complete, if lobe-finned fish had vanished, there would be no amphibians, no reptiles, no mammals, no humans. From the long goodbye of the Devonian, Earth entered the Carboniferous and Permian, ages of forests and reptiles, of insects and swamps. But even as life flourished again, another trial loomed, one far greater than all before. The Permian extinction, when Earth came closer than ever to wiping the slate entirely clean. After the Devonian collapse, life rebuilt once again. Forests thickened, their roots binding soil, their trunks reaching skyward. Vast swampy lowlands gave rise to coal beds that still fuel our world today. Giant insects filled the air, their wings catching sunlight, while amphibians thrived along riverbanks. Reptiles emerged, more independent of water than their amphibian cousins, their eggs adapting them to drier lands. It was a time of expansion, invention, and diversity. And yet, all of this abundance led into catastrophe, the greatest extinction event in Earth's history, the Permian extinction, also known as the Great Dying. About 252 million years ago, Earth convulsed with violence. In Siberia, volcanic eruptions of unimaginable scale burst forth, pouring lava across millions of square kilometers. For hundreds of thousands of years, these eruptions did not cease. Ash and gases filled the atmosphere, blocking sunlight, chilling the planet in winters of volcanic dust. Yet at the same time, greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane accumulated, trapping heat, turning cold into fever. The climate swung wildly, extremes that life could not endure. Oceans grew acidic, their chemistry transformed. Carbon dioxide dissolved into seawater, lowering pH, dissolving shells, weakening reefs. Oxygen levels plummeted until vast stretches of ocean became anoxic, dead zones where no creature could breathe. On land, forests withered under heat and drought. Rivers ran dry, soils eroded, insects perished in swarms. Entire ecosystems collapsed in chain reactions, one loss cascading into another. It is estimated that more than 90% of marine species and 70% of land species vanished. Coral reefs disappeared entirely, not to return for millions of years. Trilobites, survivors of earlier extinctions, were erased forever. Insects, which had thrived for hundreds of millions of years, suffered their only mass extinction. Vertebrates on land dwindled to a handful of resilient lineages. The world teetered on the brink of lifelessness. For the lineage that would one day lead to mammals, this was the darkest hour. Early synapsids, sometimes called mammal-like reptiles, had flourished before the extinction, ranging from small burrowers to large predators. But most perished in the Great Dying. Only a few small, resilient forms endured, hiding in marginal habitats, eking out survival. Among them were ancestors of mammals, fragile survivors in a collapsing world. Had they vanished, the story of humanity would have ended here, in silence beneath a poisoned sky. The Permian extinction was so complete, so devastating, that Earth's recovery took more than 10 million years. For millions of years afterward, ecosystems were sparse, dominated by opportunistic species clinging to survival. The Earth seemed broken, its resilience tested to the limit. And yet life endured. From the ruins of synapsids came new forms, small and tenacious. From the collapse of ecosystems came the seeds of future diversity. The Earth, scorched and emptied, began again. Imagine this moment in deep time. Forests burned beneath volcanic skies. Rivers turned sour, lifeless. Oceans darkened, stagnant, their surfaces hot as bath water, their depths suffocating. Creatures drift lifeless, their shells dissolving, their bodies sinking into silence. On land, great reptiles fall, insects vanish, synapsids collapse into extinction. And yet, in burrows, in hidden streams, in shaded crevices, some survive. Small, overlooked, fragile, but alive. From them life will recover, though slower and more painfully than ever before. The great dying is a reminder of how fragile our existence truly is. Humanity's ancestors survived not because they were destined to, but because chance and resilience allowed it. Had the Siberian eruptions been more intense, had the atmosphere tipped further into chaos, life itself might have ended. We are here only because the thread held, by the slimmest margin, across Earth's greatest trial. And from that margin came renewal. The Permian ended, the Triassic began, and the stage was set for new lineages to rise. Among them were the first dinosaurs, small and tentative at first, but destined for dominance. And in the shadows, the mammalian ancestors persisted, waiting, surviving, preparing unknowingly for futures far beyond their own. After the Devonian collapse, life rebuilt once again. Forests thickened, their roots binding soil, their trunks reaching skyward. Vast swampy lowlands gave rise to coal beds that still fuel our world today. Giant insects filled the air, their wings catching sunlight, while amphibians thrived along riverbanks. Reptiles emerged, more independent of water than their amphibian cousins, their eggs adapting them to drier lands. It was a time of expansion, invention, and diversity. And yet, all of this abundance led into catastrophe, the greatest extinction event in Earth's history, the Permian extinction, also known as the Great Dying. About 252 million years ago, Earth convulsed with violence. In Siberia, volcanic eruptions of unimaginable scale burst forth, pouring lava across millions of square kilometers. For hundreds of thousands of years, these eruptions did not cease. Ash and gases filled the atmosphere, blocking sunlight, chilling the planet in winters of volcanic dust. Yet at the same time, greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane accumulated, trapping heat, turning cold into fever. The climate swung wildly, extremes that life could not endure. Oceans grew acidic, their chemistry transformed. Carbon dioxide dissolved into seawater, lowering pH, dissolving shells, weakening reefs. Oxygen levels plummeted until vast stretches of ocean became anoxic, dead zones where no creature could breathe. On land, forests withered under heat and drought. Rivers ran dry, soils eroded, insects perished in swarms. Entire ecosystems collapsed in chain reactions, one loss cascading into another. It is estimated that more than 90% of marine species and 70% of land species vanished. Coral reefs disappeared entirely, not to return for millions of years. Trilobites, survivors of earlier extinctions, were erased forever. Insects, which had thrived for hundreds of millions of years, suffered their only mass extinction. Vertebrates on land dwindled to a handful of resilient lineages. The world teetered on the brink of lifelessness. For the lineage that would one day lead to mammals, this was the darkest hour. Early synapsids, sometimes called mammal-like reptiles, had flourished before the extinction, ranging from small burrowers to large predators. But most perished in the Great Dying. Only a few small, resilient forms endured, hiding in marginal habitats, eking out survival. Among them were ancestors of mammals, fragile survivors in a collapsing world. Had they vanished, the story of humanity would have ended here, in silence beneath a poisoned sky. The Permian extinction was so complete, so devastating, that Earth's recovery took more than 10 million years. For millions of years afterward, ecosystems were sparse, dominated by opportunistic species clinging to survival. The Earth seemed broken, its resilience tested to the limit. And yet life endured. From the ruins of synapsids came new forms, small and tenacious. From the collapse of ecosystems came the seeds of future diversity. The Earth, scorched and emptied, began again. Imagine this moment in deep time. Forests burned beneath volcanic skies. Rivers turned sour, lifeless. Oceans darkened, stagnant, their surfaces hot as bath water, their depths suffocating. Creatures drift lifeless, their shells dissolving, their bodies sinking into silence. On land, great reptiles fall, insects vanish, synapsids collapse into extinction. And yet, in burrows, in hidden streams, in shaded crevices, some survive. Small, overlooked, fragile, but alive. From them life will recover, though slower and more painfully than ever before. The Great Dying is a reminder of how fragile our existence truly is. Humanity's ancestors survived not because they were destined to, but because chance and resilience allowed it. Had the Siberian eruptions been more intense, had the atmosphere tipped further into chaos, life itself might have ended. We are here only because the thread held, by the slimmest margin, across Earth's greatest trial. And from that margin came renewal. The Permian ended, the Triassic began, and the stage was set for new lineages to rise. Among them were the first dinosaurs, small and tentative at first, but destined for dominance. And in the shadows, the mammalian ancestors persisted, waiting, surviving, preparing unknowingly for futures far beyond their own. For more than 130 million years after the Triassic-Jurassic extinction, dinosaurs ruled the Earth. They grew into astonishing forms: sauropods stretching longer than city buses, armored stegosaurs and ankylosaurs bristling with plates and spikes, swift raptors hunting in packs, and tyrannosaurs with jaws that could crush bone. The seas were filled with marine reptiles, ichthyosaurs like streamlined dolphins, plesiosaurs with long necks weaving through the water, mosasaurs prowling like dragons. The skies belonged to pterosaurs, wings casting shadows across coastal cliffs. It was a world of giants, thriving in forests of cycads and conifers, under skies filled with warmth and oxygen. Meanwhile, mammals remained small, quiet, overlooked. They burrowed, climbed trees, and hunted insects in the night. Though tiny, they were adaptable, experimenting with forms: gliders, swimmers, omnivores. For millions of years they survived in the shadows of giants, never rising but never vanishing either. Their persistence was crucial, for when catastrophe came again they were ready. 66 million years ago the Earth faced its most famous trial. An asteroid, 10 kilometers wide, hurtled through space and struck the Yucatan Peninsula in what is now Mexico. The impact released energy greater than billions of nuclear bombs. In an instant, forests ignited, shockwaves shattered landscapes, and a tsunami taller than skyscrapers surged outward. The sky itself caught fire, raining molten rock across continents. Within hours, the world was transformed. The aftermath was even worse. Dust and soot filled the atmosphere, blocking sunlight. Photosynthesis collapsed, plants withered, and food chains crumbled. Temperatures dropped sharply in a nuclear winter, freezing ecosystems unprepared for cold. Acid rain fell, poisoning soils and seas. For months, perhaps years, the Earth was dark, its warmth gone, its abundance erased. Dinosaurs, once masters of the land, could not survive. Their immense bodies required food that no longer grew, their eggs vulnerable in nests that went cold. One by one they disappeared, their reign ended not by competition but by catastrophe. In the seas, marine reptiles perished too, along with ammonites, whose spiral shells had drifted through oceans for hundreds of millions of years. By the time light returned to Earth, more than 75% of all species were gone. And yet, amid the ruins, some survived. Crocodiles endured in rivers and swamps. Birds, descendants of small feathered dinosaurs, found refuge and persisted. And mammals, small and adaptable, endured by eating seeds, insects, and roots. Their small size, flexible diets, and burrowing habits became their salvation. From them, after the skies cleared, came an explosion of diversity: primates, ungulates, carnivores, and eventually the ancestors of humans. Picture the moment of impact. Dinosaurs graze in warm forests, pterosaurs wheel in skies, mosasaurs glide through oceans. Then a blinding light streaks across the horizon. The ground trembles, the sky ignites, forests erupt in fire. Hours later the earth is silent, its air thick with ash. For weeks no sun rises, only a dim red glow. In burrows, small mammals huddle, their bodies pressed together, feeding on what scraps they find. They endure. Above them giants vanish forever. The asteroid strike is a reminder that dominance offers no protection from chance. Dinosaurs ruled for over 160 million years, far longer than humans have existed, and yet, in a geological heartbeat, their empire ended. Mammals, once marginal, inherited the world. And from that inheritance in time came us. But our story was not secure. Even after the dinosaurs fell, other crises loomed, smaller but still devastating, each threatening to prune the tree of life once more. And beyond those ancient extinctions, a new threat has emerged, not from space or volcanoes but from us. When the dust of the asteroid finally cleared and light returned to Earth, the world was transformed. Forests regrew, oceans refilled with life, and mammals, once hidden in shadows, spread into niches left vacant by the vanished giants. It might be tempting to imagine this as the beginning of a stable new era, a straight path leading toward humanity. But Earth never grants stability for long. Even after the fall of dinosaurs, smaller extinction pulses rippled through deep time, shaping and reshaping the story of life. Each one again could have cut short the fragile line that would one day become us. In the Paleocene and Eocene, 56 million years ago, the Earth warmed abruptly in a dramatic climate shift known as the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, PTM. Carbon flooded the atmosphere, temperatures soared by as much as 8 degrees Celsius, and oceans turned acidic. For hundreds of thousands of years, ecosystems struggled under heat and instability. Many species perished, while others migrated or evolved to cope. Mammals, however, seized the opportunity, diversifying rapidly into primates, hoofed grazers, and early carnivores. Still, it was a near thing. Had warming been more severe, had food webs collapsed entirely, the lineages we depend upon could have ended in heat and acid, erased before primates ever arose. Later, during the Oligocene and Miocene, ice ages flickered in and out, reshaping continents, drying forests, and forcing species to adapt or vanish. Grasslands expanded, forests retreated, and with them came new trials. Many mammal groups that once flourished disappeared forever. Yet primates survived by clinging to shrinking forests, evolving traits of flexibility and intelligence that would one day serve us well. Their survival was not destiny, it was adaptation under pressure, another narrow escape. Even in more recent prehistory, the threat of extinction loomed. Ice ages waxed and waned across the Pleistocene, glaciers carving valleys, sea levels rising and falling. With each shift, ecosystems shattered. Megafauna, the mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, rose in abundance, then fell in waves of disappearance. Humanity itself, in its earliest form, faced trials in this unstable world, reduced at times to only a few thousand breeding individuals. Our species nearly vanished before it spread. The survival of humans, too, is an echo of the same pattern: resilience in the face of collapse. The lesson of these smaller extinctions is that the story of life is never smooth. It is a path of rises and falls, of abundance and sudden erasure. Even after the great asteroid, the world tested life again and again, as if reminding it that nothing is secure. For humanity, every one of these events was a trial long before our arrival, a narrowing of paths, a pruning of possibilities. Each extinction was an attempt in its own way to erase the future. Imagine the Earth during the Paleocene warming. Tropical forests stretch far into the north, crocodiles swim in polar rivers, and mammals huddle in heat, seeking shade in relentless warmth. Many perish, unable to adapt, but some endure, small, clever, flexible. Then picture the glacial cycles of the Pleistocene, ice sheets towering over continents, pushing animals southward, erasing habitats. Megafauna collapse, but humans with fire and tools survive in pockets, fragile yet persistent. Across these ages the theme remains: life is tested, pared down, and reshaped. This is why we cannot see humanity as inevitable. Every extinction pulse could have cut the line. Every climate swing, every collapse of ecosystems, every narrowing of habitats could have erased the fragile ancestors we rely upon. We exist not because survival was assured, but because chance and adaptation aligned just enough to carry us through. And now, as we look back across these ages of trial, we must confront a sobering truth. The age we live in may itself be another extinction, one not born of volcanoes or asteroids but of human hands. The long shadow of extinction has not ended, it has simply shifted, and we are no longer its victims alone, we are its cause. For billions of years, extinction has been shaped by forces beyond life's control. Ice ages, volcanoes, shifting continents, impacts from the sky. Each trial threatened to erase the fragile lineage that would one day give rise to humanity. And now, in a twist almost unimaginable, we find ourselves not the threatened but the threatening. The same species that survived countless narrow escapes has become the engine of a new extinction. Scientists call it the Sixth Mass Extinction, and its cause is us. It began slowly, invisibly, in ways easy to overlook. Humans spread across continents, hunting megafauna into disappearance. Mammoths, mastodons, giant sloths, and saber-toothed cats, all gone within a geological blink, their absence felt in ecosystems that had relied on them for millennia. As agriculture rose, forests were cut, rivers diverted, soils exhausted. Civilizations grew, and with them, the footprint of humanity expanded. Each act was small compared to volcanoes or asteroids, yet combined they reshaped Earth more thoroughly than any natural force since the Permian eruptions. In modern times, the pace has accelerated. Industrialization poured carbon into the atmosphere, warming the planet. Oceans, once buffers of stability, absorbed the excess, turning acidic, threatening reefs and fish alike. Plastics drift through currents, microfragments found even in the deepest trenches. Noise pollution disrupts whales' songs, chemical runoff deadens wetlands, overfishing empties seas once thought inexhaustible. On land, deforestation erases habitats, cities expand without pause, and species vanish at rates 100 times faster than background extinction. Today the numbers are stark. 1 in 4 mammals, 1 in 8 birds, 1 in 3 amphibians faces risk of extinction. Insects, the unseen engines of ecosystems, decline in swarms, their absence silent but catastrophic. Coral reefs, cradles of marine diversity, bleach and crumble. This is not a distant possibility, it is unfolding around us, an extinction as real as any asteroid or eruption, though driven by human choice. And here lies the paradox. The very species that nearly vanished countless times is now erasing others. Every extinction of deep time threatened to erase humanity before it began. Now humanity itself has become an extinction event, altering the story of life not by accident but by design. In doing so, we place ourselves once more at risk, for we depend on the very systems we unravel: forests for air, oceans for climate, species for stability. By erasing others, we threaten ourselves. Picture the Earth today as if seen from deep time's perspective. Forests once unbroken, now patchy, rivers diverted, skies heavy with carbon. Creatures that once thrived in abundance, elephants, whales, birds, dwindle under pressure. Insects vanish quietly, unseen, yet their absence ripples outward, affecting plants, predators, even climate. The Earth shifts again, not through cosmic impact but through human hands. We are not outside the cycle of extinction, we are its newest chapter. And yet, unlike past events, this one is not inevitable. We cannot stop asteroids, we cannot silence volcanoes. But we can choose forests over wastelands, protection over destruction, renewal over collapse. This is the first extinction in Earth's history caused by a single species, and the first that species might choose to end. Whether we will do so remains uncertain. The sixth mass extinction is not complete, but it has begun. The story of humanity, born from survival against catastrophe, now risks being undone by its own making. In this, history folds back on itself and the deep truth returns: survival is never guaranteed. And so, as we look upon our present age, we must ask what deep time asks of us. Will humanity join the countless species erased, its thread cut by its own hand? Or will it learn at last from the trials of the past, choosing resilience not only for itself but for the world it inhabits? For billions of years, extinction has been shaped by forces beyond life's control. Ice ages, volcanoes, shifting continents, impacts from the sky. Each trial threatened to erase the fragile lineage that would one day give rise to humanity. And now, in a twist almost unimaginable, we find ourselves not the threatened but the threatening. The same species that survived countless narrow escapes has become the engine of a new extinction. Scientists call it the sixth mass extinction, and its cause is us. It began slowly, invisibly, in ways easy to overlook. Humans spread across continents, hunting megafauna into disappearance. Mammoths, mastodons, giant sloths, and saber-toothed cats, all gone within a geological blink, their absence felt in ecosystems that had relied on them for millennia. As agriculture rose, forests were cut, rivers diverted, soils exhausted. Civilizations grew, and with them, the footprint of humanity expanded. Each act was small compared to volcanoes or asteroids, yet combined they reshaped Earth more thoroughly than any natural force since the Permian eruptions. In modern times, the pace has accelerated. Industrialization poured carbon into the atmosphere, warming the planet. Oceans, once buffers of stability, absorbed the excess, turning acidic, threatening reefs and fish alike. Plastics drift through currents, microfragments found even in the deepest trenches. Noise pollution disrupts whale songs, chemical runoff deadens wetlands, overfishing empties seas once thought inexhaustible. On land, deforestation erases habitats, cities expand without pause, and species vanish at rates 100 times faster than background extinction. Today the numbers are stark. 1 in 4 mammals, 1 in 8 birds, 1 in 3 amphibians faces risk of extinction. Insects, the unseen engines of ecosystems, decline in swarms, their absence silent but catastrophic. Coral reefs, cradles of marine diversity, bleach and crumble. This is not a distant possibility, it is unfolding around us, an extinction as real as any asteroid or eruption, though driven by human choice. And here lies the paradox. The very species that nearly vanished countless times is now erasing others. Every extinction of deep time threatened to erase humanity before it began. Now humanity itself has become an extinction event, altering the story of life not by accident but by design. In doing so, we place ourselves once more at risk, for we depend on the very systems we unravel: forests for air, oceans for climate, species for stability. By erasing others, we threaten ourselves. Picture the Earth today as if seen from deep time's perspective. Forests once unbroken now patchy, rivers diverted, skies heavy with carbon. Creatures that once thrived in abundance, elephants, whales, birds, dwindle under pressure. Insects vanish quietly, unseen, yet their absence ripples outward, affecting plants, predators, even climate. The Earth shifts again not through cosmic impact but through human hands. We are not outside the cycle of extinction, we are its newest chapter. And yet, unlike past events, this one is not inevitable. We cannot stop asteroids, we cannot silence volcanoes. But we can choose forests over wastelands, protection over destruction, renewal over collapse. This is the first extinction in Earth's history caused by a single species, and the first that species might choose to end. Whether we will do so remains uncertain. The sixth mass extinction is not complete, but it has begun. The story of humanity, born from survival against catastrophe, now risks being undone by its own making. In this, history folds back on itself and the deep truth returns. Survival is never guaranteed. And so, as we look upon our present age, we must ask what deep time asks of us. Will humanity join the countless species erased, its thread cut by its own hand? Or will it learn at last from the trials of the past, choosing resilience not only for itself but for the world it inhabits? While the oceans bear silent scars of heat, acid, and plastic, the land above them tells a parallel story. Forests vanish, grasslands fragment, deserts spread, and species once abundant slip quietly into memory. The crisis of extinction is not confined to water. It is written across every landscape, every biome, every horizon. And like the oceans, the Earth's lands remind us that what disappears does not return easily, if at all. Forests, Earth's lungs, face relentless pressure. Rainforests in the Amazon, Congo, and Southeast Asia are felled for timber, agriculture, and expansion. Each tree lost is not only carbon released but a habitat erased. Entire ecosystems collapse when canopy falls. Birds, insects, mammals, fungi, and plants bound together in fragile webs. Species with narrow ranges, evolved for unique niches, vanish first, their homes gone forever. And when they vanish, connections unravel, rippling outward into silence. Grasslands too face disappearance. Once stretching across continents, they now shrink under plows and cities. Prairie dogs, elephants, lions, and countless grazing animals lose their ranges, replaced by monocultures that feed humanity but starve biodiversity. The soil itself, stripped of cover, erodes into rivers, carrying with it centuries of fertility. Extinction is not only of species but of ecosystems, entire patterns of life dissolved into fields and dust. Deserts expand as climates warm and soils degrade. Habitats vanish under shifting sands, species migrate or perish, and ancient balances collapse. Amphibians, sensitive to the slightest changes in water and temperature, decline in staggering numbers. Birds that once migrated in clouds across skies fall silent. Insects, the unnoticed engineers of pollination and renewal, dwindle in swarms unseen. Without them, crops falter, flowers fade, and the chain of food weakens. And then there are the great animals, the megafauna of today. Elephants, rhinos, tigers, bears, creatures whose presence defines wildness, are hunted, poached, and confined to shrinking reserves. They are survivors of older ages, cousins of mammoths and saber-toothed cats, yet their numbers fall under human pressure. Each loss is more than a statistic. It is a reminder that the giants of Earth are fragile, their survival not assured even in our age. Picture the landscapes of the present. A rainforest cleared into barren ground, smoke rising where once 1,000 species lived. A grassland plowed into endless rows of crops, the wild herds gone, the predators vanished. A desert stretching wider, its plants brittle, its creatures silent. And in the distance, the echo of animals no longer there, their absence felt more strongly than their presence once was. Unlike past extinctions which were driven by natural cataclysms, this one spread slowly but relentlessly, cut by axes, paved by roads, burned in fields. It does not come as a single moment of impact or eruption but as daily choices, accumulated into crisis. The result is the same: species erased, lineages cut, futures narrowed. Humanity, shaped by ancient extinctions, now lives inside one of its own making. And here lies the irony. The very species once nearly erased by volcanoes, asteroids, and ice ages now threatens to erase the richness of life that carried it into being. In forests, grasslands, mountains, and deserts, extinction gathers pace. The Earth's surface, like its seas, becomes another front in the sixth mass extinction. Yet as with the oceans, possibility remains. Forests can regrow if protected, grasslands can be restored, deserts can be slowed, species can recover when given space and time. Life's resilience, proven through billions of years of catastrophe, still endures. But it requires choice, restraint, humility, the same qualities that once allowed our ancestors to survive when giants perished. The question is whether humanity, with all its power, will remember that lesson. From these vanishing lands, the story turns back to deep time once more. For even in the darkest trials of the past, extinction was not absolute. Life, fragile and persistent, always endured. And in those survivors, in those threads carried forward, lies the most important truth of all. Every extinction reshapes not only the world of its time but the world of its future. Through every catastrophe, from frozen seas to fiery skies, from acid oceans to collapsing forests, one truth endures: life does not vanish entirely. It bends, it retreats, it diminishes, but it does not yield completely. Survival, though fragile, always finds a way. The history of extinction is not only a story of endings, it is a story of beginnings, of resilience written into the very fabric of life. Consider the first great trial, when the Ordovician seas froze. Most species perished, yet some clung to pockets of oxygen, to warmer currents, to chance refuges where the world had not collapsed entirely. From these survivors came new ecosystems, reshaped and renewed. In the Devonian, when reefs crumbled and armored fish disappeared, lobe-finned fish endured, their lungs and sturdy fins carrying them into new worlds. From them arose amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and us. Their persistence in shallow waters, their awkward first steps onto land, became the foundation of terrestrial life. During the great dying of the Permian, when 9 out of 10 species vanished, small synapsids endured in burrows, surviving drought and heat. Insects adapted, microbes shifted chemistries, ecosystems rebuilt from ruins. From those remnants, life recovered, though slower than ever before. When Triassic volcanoes ignited the skies and reptiles fell in masses, dinosaurs and mammals both found paths forward. Dinosaurs rose to grandeur, mammals to shadows, yet both endured. The story of life did not end, it simply turned a new chapter. And when the asteroid struck at the close of the Cretaceous, it was not the giants who survived but the small, the burrowers, the seed-eaters, the adaptable. Birds inherited the skies, mammals inherited the land. From their resilience, new possibilities unfolded, and humanity's path was secured. What connects these survivors is not dominance but adaptability. They were not the rulers of their worlds, they were often the overlooked, the marginal, the fragile. But they could bend where others broke. They found refuge in burrows, in night, in overlooked corners of ecosystems. They endured extremes, lived on little, survived by being small, by being flexible, by being persistent. This is the paradox of extinction. It does not favor the mighty but the modest. The armored fish perished, the towering reptiles fell, the titans of forests vanished. But the quiet survivors, small, adaptable, resilient, carried the thread forward. Humanity itself descends from those threads. We are not children of dominion, we are children of survival. Picture the Permian world, scorched and emptied. Across vast plains, silence reigns, forests gone, rivers poisoned. Yet in burrows, Small synapsids breathe quietly, waiting out the heat. They do not know they carry the future, but they endure. Picture the darkened Earth after the asteroid impact, skies choked with ash, forests burning. Yet in hidden burrows, mammals huddle, feeding on seeds and insects, surviving where giants cannot. From them comes not only renewal but destiny. Survival has always been improbable. Each extinction could have been complete. Each crisis could have erased the line that led to us. That it did not is a miracle of resilience, a reminder that chance and adaptability shape history as much as strength or dominance. Humanity exists not because our ancestors were mighty, but because they were persistent, fragile survivors in collapsing worlds. And now, as the sixth extinction unfolds, the lesson returns. The survivors of today may not be the rulers of ecosystems but the overlooked. Insects, microbes, adaptable species may carry life forward when others vanish. The question is whether humanity, with all its power, will be among them, or whether we will pass the thread to others, forgotten in the ruins of our own making. Through resilience, life always reweaves itself, but it is never the same. Each extinction reshapes the path, creating futures unimaginable before. And so, the lesson deepens. Extinction is not only erasure but transformation. It is the fire through which life remakes itself, the crucible in which possibility is narrowed but also redirected. Humanity's existence is proof of that paradox. From these threads of resilience, the story continues, not only of what was lost but of what was gained. The next step in the journey leads us to explore how evolution after extinction reshaped the Earth again and again, creating worlds that bore little resemblance to those that came before. If extinctions are the shadows of Earth's story, then the light that follows is renewal. After each collapse, life does not simply return to what was, it invents anew. Entire ecosystems vanish, but from the ruins come species, forms, and worlds no one could have imagined before. Each extinction is both an ending and a beginning, a narrowing of possibility and a redirection of evolution's path. Without them, Earth would not look as it does today and humanity would not exist at all. After the Ordovician seas froze and thawed, survivors rebuilt in different ways. Coral reefs eventually returned, but they were not the same. The species that had dominated before were gone, replaced by new builders, new fish, new patterns of life. From silence, the oceans found new voices, and with them, new opportunities for complexity. The Devonian extinction, which erased armored fish and ancient reefs, cleared space for others. Lobe-finned fish, once marginal, began their tentative march onto land. Amphibians took hold in rivers and swamps, breathing air and walking on limbs adapted from fins. From this step came reptiles, mammals, and eventually us. Without the Devonian collapse, fish might have remained rulers of the seas forever, and land might have stayed barren of vertebrate life. The Permian, though catastrophic, seeded the Mesozoic. Synapsids dwindled, but archosaurs, ancestors of crocodiles, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs, expanded. Insects reinvented themselves, ecosystems reorganized, and new forests rose. The greatest loss became the foundation of new grandeur, a stage reset for an age of reptiles that would last millions of years. The Triassic extinction, clearing competitors, gave dinosaurs the opportunity to rise. From small, agile survivors, they diversified into giants, flyers, and predators of every scale. Mammals, pushed into shadows, survived by being small and nocturnal. This dual path, dinosaurs above, mammals below, lasted for more than 130 million years, shaping an entire era of Earth's history. And when the asteroid ended that reign, mammals at last stepped into open daylight. Freed from the weight of giants, they diversified explosively. Whales took to the seas, bats to the skies, primates to the trees. Hoofed animals roamed plains, predators sharpened their teeth, intelligence began to bloom. Humanity's lineage expanded, adapted, and thrived in worlds where dinosaurs no longer walked. Without that extinction, the Earth might still belong to reptilian giants, and primates might never have emerged at all. Each extinction, then, was both catastrophe and creation. They pruned the tree of life, cutting branches forever, but also allowed new shoots to grow, reaching in directions impossible before. In this sense, humanity is not only a survivor of extinctions but a product of them. Our very existence is woven from endings. Picture the aftermath of the Cretaceous asteroid. Forests regrow slowly, mammals scurry in shadows, birds sing into empty skies. The world feels quieter, diminished. And yet, in that quiet, a new rhythm begins. Mammals diversify, filling spaces dinosaurs once ruled. The earth, though scarred, becomes fertile ground for a different kind of future. Out of ruin comes renewal as it always has. This is why extinction cannot be understood only as tragedy. It is tragedy, yes, species gone forever, ecosystems erased, beauty lost. But it is also transformation. The earth is not static. It is process, movement, change. Extinctions remind us of this truth, that stability is illusion, and that life's strength lies in reinvention. For humanity, this lesson is double-edged. We owe our existence to extinctions, to catastrophes that cleared the way for our ancestors. But we also live in an age where our actions trigger similar upheavals. What arises after us, if we falter, may be as different from our world as dinosaurs were from trilobites. Extinction is not only history, it is prophecy, a reminder that renewal follows collapse, but not always in ways we would recognize or desire. From the ashes of every extinction, Earth has created something new. And so the question deepens: what new world will rise from the one we are shaping now? Will it be one we can survive or one that leaves us behind? The story of mass extinctions is not only ancient. It is not only about trilobites, dinosaurs, or mammal-like reptiles. It is also about us. For even after extinctions cleared the path, even after mammals diversified and primates emerged, humanity's own story was almost cut short more than once. We are not only the improbable children of survival, we are survivors ourselves, balanced for millennia on the edge of disappearance. Around 70,000 years ago, long before cities or written words, humanity faced one of its closest calls. In what is now Indonesia, the Toba supervolcano erupted in an explosion so vast it darkened skies across the globe. Ash fell for weeks, sunlight dimmed, and global temperatures dropped. Crops withered, animals perished, ecosystems faltered. For early humans who lived by gathering and hunting, the crisis was existential. Genetic evidence suggests our species was reduced to a tiny remnant, perhaps only a few thousand breeding individuals. In that narrow bottleneck, our survival balanced on chance. Had those few communities perished, humanity would have been erased before history began. This was not the only trial. Climate swings of the Ice Age tested us again and again. Glaciers advanced, covering continents, pushing humans southward into refuges. Cold shrank resources, driving species into extinction and threatening our fragile bands. At times, we survived by fire, by tools, by cooperation, but always by the narrowest of margins. Other human lineages, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and countless others, perished, their stories cut short. Ours continued, but only barely. Even after humanity spread, collapse haunted us. Droughts ended civilizations, famines starved populations, plagues erased millions. Each time, our species could have faltered, could have dwindled beyond recovery. That we endured is remarkable, but it is not assurance of destiny. Survival is never guaranteed. It is only borrowed. Picture a small band of humans on the plains of Africa 70,000 years ago. Skies are dimmed by ash, plants wilt, animals vanish. They huddle around fire, sharing meager food, listening to winds heavy with dust. Around them, silence grows. Yet they endure, one night, one generation at a time. They do not know they carry the future, but from them will come billions, civilizations, stories. Our existence is written in their persistence. These narrow escapes remind us that humanity's survival is not a given, not inevitable. We are not exempt from the forces that shaped life before us. The same Earth that froze seas, ignited skies, and toppled giants can test us again, in ways natural or of our own making. Every mass extinction was a trial, and humanity has always been on trial too. And now in our age the trial has turned inward. The sixth extinction is not only about other species, it is about us. For as ecosystems collapse and climates shift, the resilience we once depended upon is tested again. The question is no longer whether extinctions shape humanity, they always have, but whether this time humanity itself will survive its own shadow. From these narrow escapes, we turn toward the present, to see how our species stands now, not only as survivor but as agent, as both inheritor and driver of extinction. For billions of years, life on Earth endured extinctions caused by forces beyond its control. Ice ages, volcanoes, asteroids, shifting seas. Humanity arose only because chance and resilience allowed fragile ancestors to endure those trials. We are the children of survival, the improbable result of threads that refuse to break. Yet in a turn as startling as it is sobering, the survivor has become the cause. Humanity, once nearly erased, now drives extinction at a scale unseen since the asteroid that felled the dinosaurs. The change began quietly. As humans spread across continents, they carried fire, tools, and hunger. With coordinated hunts and sharpened weapons, they brought down the great megafauna. Mammoths, mastodons, woolly rhinos, giant kangaroos, and saber-toothed cats, creatures that had survived ice and fire, vanished within centuries of human arrival. Where once herds thundered across plains, silence followed. Our ancestors did not know it, but they were writing the opening lines of a new extinction. As agriculture rose, forests fell. Fields spread where wildlands had been. Rivers were dammed, soils turned, animals domesticated. Civilizations grew, reshaping landscapes into mosaics of cities and farms. What had once been diverse ecosystems narrowed into monocultures. The abundance that supported us came at the cost of countless species, their niches erased beneath plows and axes. The industrial age accelerated this shift. Coal and oil poured carbon into skies, warming climates, altering oceans, driving species toward collapse. Machines hunted whales to the brink, nets emptied seas, railways and roads fragmented habitats. Forests receded faster than they could regrow, deserts spread where once grasslands thrived. Humanity, in its drive to flourish, became a geological force, reshaping Earth as profoundly as any asteroid or eruption. And now, in the present, the toll is undeniable. Species vanish daily, their names often recorded only in lists, their existence reduced to fossils in waiting. Amphibians fall to disease and habitat loss. Insects decline in silence, their absence unnoticed until crops falter. Coral reefs bleach and crumble, their collapse unraveling entire oceans. Elephants, rhinos, tigers, and countless others edge closer to memory than presence. The Earth's great library of life, written over billions of years, loses pages faster than they can be read. Picture the difference between past and present. When the asteroid struck, life had no choice, it was an accident of the cosmos. When Siberian volcanoes erupted, life endured or perished without influence. But today extinction spreads through roads, plastic, smoke, and greed. It spreads through choices, what we cut, what we burn, what we consume. For the first time, a single species decides the fate of others. And in deciding theirs, it decides its own. This is the turning point. Humanity, shaped by extinction, now writes extinction. We are no longer only survivors of catastrophe, we are catalysts of one. The irony is profound. The very processes that allowed us to flourish, intelligence, cooperation, technology, now drive destruction at a planetary scale. In surviving we became powerful, and in power we became peril. And yet, because this extinction is of our making, it is also within our grasp. We cannot undo asteroids or silence volcanoes, but we can choose forests over wastelands, oceans alive over oceans empty, renewal over collapse. We are the first species to cause a mass extinction knowingly, and the first that might choose to stop one. From this recognition, the story deepens. Extinction is not only history or present, it is a mirror. It reflects our choices, our values, our vision of the future. Will we continue the pattern, erasing the diversity that shaped us? Or will we, for the first time in Earth's story, break the cycle? When we look at the world today, forests shrinking, oceans warming, species vanishing, it may feel unprecedented, a crisis unlike any other. Yet in deep time the Earth has faced this story before. The Sixth Extinction unfolding now carries the fingerprints of the Big Five that came before it. Each one, though unique, offers lessons that speak to our moment, if only we are willing to listen. The Ordovician extinction taught us that climate can change abruptly, and that when seas fall or temperatures swing, life is vulnerable. Today, as ice sheets melt and seas rise, as climates shift faster than species can adapt, we see the same fragility replayed. Just as ancient reefs crumbled in cooling seas, modern corals bleach in warming ones. The pattern is different, but the theme is the same. Life depends on balance, and balance can shatter quickly. The Devonian extinction showed that even slow changes, stretched over millions of years, can erode ecosystems until they collapse. Then it was plants reshaping soils and carbon cycles, tipping oceans into anoxic death. Now it is humanity altering carbon and nitrogen, fueling dead zones and acidifying seas. The timescales differ, but the mechanism echoes. When chemistry shifts, oceans suffer, and with them all life. The Permian extinction, the Great Dying, revealed how interconnected crises compound. Volcanism drove warming, warming drove ocean stagnation, stagnation fueled mass death. No single factor was fatal alone, it was their convergence that ended 9 out of 10 species. Today we see convergence again. Deforestation, warming, overfishing, pollution, each amplifying the others. The lesson is sobering. Crises are not isolated. They feed upon each other until collapse spreads everywhere. The Triassic extinction reminded us that from fire can come opportunity, but at a terrible cost. Dinosaurs rose because others fell, their dominance built on ruins. Today humanity reshapes ecosystems in ways that may allow some species to thrive, rats, cockroaches, invasive plants, but their flourishing comes alongside loss. Extinction is always both death and redirection, but what grows after depends on what survives the fire. And the Cretaceous extinction, caused by a single asteroid, shows how quickly dominance can end. Dinosaurs ruled for more than 160 million years, and in a single day their reign collapsed. Humanity has reigned only briefly by comparison. If an asteroid could erase the dinosaurs' empire, what might unchecked warming or a single mistake of our own making do to us? The lesson is clear. No species is secure, no reign eternal. Picture these echoes across time. Trilobites vanishing in frozen seas. Armored fish drifting lifeless in anoxic waters. Forests burning under volcanic skies. Dinosaurs silenced in a single night of fire and ash. Now picture forests cleared by chainsaws, reefs crumbling under heat, polar bears adrift on shrinking ice. The imagery shifts, but the rhythm is familiar. Extinction is not new. We are simply living through its latest verse. The difference, of course, is agency. The Big Five were accidents of geology, astronomy, chemistry. Today's extinction is not blind, it is chosen. And that changes everything. For if extinction is of our making, so too can its reversal be. Unlike trilobites or dinosaurs, we can see the pattern, recognize the echoes, and act. Deep time shows us that collapse is real, but it also shows us that survival is possible. The question is whether we will learn. The echoes of the Big Five remind us of two truths: that extinction is always nearer than it seems, and that renewal always follows collapse. But what kind of renewal and whether we are part of it depends on what choices are made now. From these echoes, the story leads us into reflection on what it means to live in such a moment, to be a species aware of extinction, aware of its role, aware of its fragility. No other creature has carried that burden. No other creature has held the choice. Humanity stands at a threshold, 1 foot in survival, 1 in erasure, both shadows cast by the same deep time lessons. Long before science named the Ordovician or the Permian, long before fossils revealed the vastness of time, humans still sensed that the world was fragile, that life could vanish, that endings were always near. Myths, legends, and stories across cultures reflect this intuition. They speak of floods, fires, plagues, and apocalypses, echoes of extinction woven into imagination. Long before we understood the Big Five, we dreamed of them. In Mesopotamia, ancient tablets told of a great flood that drowned the world, sparing only a remnant to begin again. In Norse mythology, Ragnarok foretold fire, ice, and gods perishing, after which a new earth would rise. Hindu texts described endless cycles of creation and destruction, worlds erased and renewed in cosmic rhythm. Even in the Americas, stories of sky fire, endless winters, and earth devouring itself abound. These myths are not literal records, but they reveal something profound. Humanity has always known that survival is fragile, that endings are possible, that life balances on narrow threads. In every age, people have looked at storms, droughts, volcanoes, and fires and seen omens of collapse. They sensed what fossils later proved, that the earth has erased worlds before and could erase them again. Myths gave names to the unknowable, comfort to fear, meaning to disaster. They taught that survival, if it came, would be by the few, by the humble, by the chosen, or the fortunate. These themes mirror what deep time shows us, that survival is always narrow and never guaranteed. As science rose, myths of ending found new forms. 19th-century geologists uncovered layers of rock filled with vanished creatures, proving that extinctions had happened long before humans. The realization was staggering. Species were not eternal, they could vanish forever. What myths had intuited, science confirmed. Later, the discovery of asteroids, volcanoes, and climate shifts gave mechanisms to ancient fears. Myths became data, but the story was the same. Worlds end and new ones begin. Today, our imagination still wrestles with extinction. Films depict apocalypses of plague, asteroid, or climate. Novels imagine ruined futures where survivors wander empty cities. Art shows burning forests, silent oceans, collapsing skies. These are not mere entertainments. They are our way of processing the shadow of deep time, of making sense of our own vulnerability. Just as myths once explained floods or fire, our modern stories explain nuclear winter, environmental collapse, or technological catastrophe. The form changes, but the intuition remains. Picture a firelit circle 10,000 years ago, a storyteller recounting how the gods flooded the earth, sparing only a few. Now picture a modern theater, a screen showing asteroids striking, cities burning, oceans rising. Both are reflections of the same awareness, that humanity's place is fragile, that extinction is never far, that survival is never certain. The stories differ, but the fear and the hope are the same. And within these stories lies guidance. Myths often end with renewal, with a remade earth, with survivors planting anew, with cycles continuing. They remind us that endings are not absolute, that life can return, that destruction does not erase possibility. Deep time says the same. After each extinction, life renewed, though never the same. Our imagination, like our fossils, carries this truth. This is why myths matter in the story of extinction. They show that humanity has always sensed what science later proved. That the earth destroys and remakes, that we are never secure, that resilience is our only inheritance. In carrying these stories, we acknowledge not only fear but continuity. We are, in a way, always preparing for endings, always imagining survival, always rehearsing resilience. From myth and story, the path returns to the present, to the choices we now face, with knowledge myths never had, with power they never imagined. What will we do, knowing we live inside an extinction event? What story will we write for those who come after, if any do? The great extinctions of the past were accidents of geology and cosmos. Asteroids no species could prevent, volcanoes no creature could quiet, climates no lineage could control. But the extinction that now gathers around us is different. For the first time in the history of Earth, one species knows what is happening. One species understands the pattern. One species holds the choice. That species is us. Today humanity stands at a threshold as momentous as any in deep time. On one side lies the path of continuity, where forests, oceans and species endure and humanity flourishes alongside them. On the other lies collapse, where ecosystems unravel, diversity shrinks, and we, like the trilobites or the dinosaurs, become another chapter of endings. Which path unfolds depends not on accident but on decision. Decisions made by us now in this brief span of history. The forces at work are familiar. Carbon in the air, forests cut, oceans strained, species vanishing. None are insurmountable alone, but together they form a convergence like the crises of the Permian, a tangle of pressures feeding one another. Warming melts ice, rising seas swallow coasts, shifting climates strain crops, hunger fuels conflict, conflict accelerates destruction. Collapse does not arrive all at once. It arrives in spirals, small fractures widening into breaks. And yet, the possibility of resilience remains. Just as survivors in past extinctions endured by adapting, humanity can choose to adapt, not only by changing where we live or what we eat, but by rethinking how we see the earth itself. We are not rulers outside the web of life. We are threads within it. To cut the web is to endanger ourselves. To tend it is to secure our own survival. The choices before us are both vast and intimate. Global policies shape climate, but so too do local actions. What forests are preserved, what rivers are protected, what species are given refuge. Technology offers tools, but it cannot replace humility. Without restraint, no invention can shield us from collapse. With restraint, even small changes ripple outward, giving ecosystems space to heal. Picture two futures. In one, the Amazon is silent, reefs are rubble, and humanity huddles in diminished lands, struggling against storms and scarcity. In the other, forests regrow, oceans replenish, species recover, and humanity thrives within a living earth. Both are possible, both within reach, both dependent on choices made in years, not millennia. Deep time shows that Earth will endure regardless. But whether humanity endures with it is the question. Unlike trilobites or dinosaurs, we are not powerless. We can see the danger. We can alter course. But awareness is not enough. It must be joined with action, with courage, with vision beyond immediate gain. For extinction is not only about species, it is about futures. The future we choose will echo not only for ourselves but for every creature that shares this planet. And so humanity stands as it never has before, both survivor and cause, both threatened and threatening, both at risk and responsible. This is our turning point, our moment of decision, our trial in the long arc of life. What comes after depends on us. From this threshold, the story turns to the heart of the matter. What it truly means to face extinction, not only as a scientific fact, not only as a historical echo, but as a lived human experience, carrying fear, grief, and hope together. To speak of extinction is not only to speak of fossils or statistics. It is to speak of feelings, of grief for what is lost, of fear for what may vanish, of hope for what might endure. Humanity, unlike trilobites or dinosaurs, does not face extinction in silence. We face it with awareness, with imagination, with hearts that grieve and minds that wonder. And in this lies both burden and gift. Grief arises first. We grieve species gone within our lifetimes. The passenger pigeon that once darkened skies in flocks of billions, the dodo erased from Mauritius, the thylacine pacing in its final cage. We grieve the coral reefs whitening, the forests burning, the silence where once birds sang. These losses are not abstract. They are felt in absence, in memory, in the emptiness of landscapes once alive with sound and motion. Extinction is not only numbers, it is silence where there was once chorus. But grief carries more than sorrow. It carries awareness. To feel grief is to recognize connection, that we are bound to the living world, that its losses wound us too. In deep time, extinctions passed without witnesses. Today we are witnesses. We record, remember, and mourn. This grief is painful, but it is also human. It means we care, and caring is the first step toward change. Alongside grief comes fear, the knowledge that collapse is not confined to other species, that it reaches into our own survival. We fear storms and droughts, hunger and displacement, the unraveling of systems we depend upon. This fear is real, but it can sharpen us, focus us, remind us of stakes too great to ignore. Fear is warning, not sentence. It tells us to act, to choose, to resist complacency. And then there is hope. Hope is not denial of danger. It is recognition that danger exists and yet change is possible. We see hope in forests regrowing when protected, in whales returning after hunting ends, in species rediscovered after thought extinct. Life, though fragile, is also resilient. When given chance, it renews. Hope is the reminder that the story is not finished, that endings are not yet complete, that the sixth extinction, unlike the Big Five, can still be slowed, softened, even stopped. Picture a child standing in a forest, listening to birdsong. For that child, extinction is not theory, it is the difference between a living chorus and a silent sky. Now picture a scientist watching a reef regenerate after protection, corals sprouting where once was rubble. These moments are small, but they are real. They remind us that extinction is not only about endings, it is about choices, and choices can open futures. Living with extinction means holding grief and hope together. It means mourning what is gone while nurturing what remains. It means accepting that we cannot undo every loss, but we can prevent new ones. It means seeing ourselves not as rulers of Earth, but as participants in its fragile web, entrusted with care. This is humanity's unique role in the story of extinctions. We carry knowledge of past collapses, awareness of present crisis, and imagination of future possibilities. No other species has held such responsibility. No other species has had the chance to change its fate. We are the first to face extinction not only as victims, but as witnesses and agents. From grief and hope, the story moves toward reflection. What extinction ultimately teaches us about life, about fragility, about our place in the cosmos. For in deep time, extinction is not anomaly, it is pattern. To understand that pattern is to understand ourselves.